All right, episode 2 of Whatever Happened to Castlevania, starring Albeleo and Adrian Tepes. So, like the previous episode, we are going to do a brief introduction. So, what our recent works are. So, my recent works have been I'm working on talking about why I don't feel Diablo is a real RPG or role playing game. How about you, Albeleo?
Ah, well, let's see. I've got a few shorts coming up, and next video is going to be discussing some positive traits about men in movies.
Okay. Well, it's funny because I'm kind of rethinking because they're overlapping with some things in this about it. I had some rethoughts about, but we'll get to it when we get started. But it sounds interesting. So, to everyone out here, this is the second episode. I'm going to put all 3 into an actual premiere video when this is all done. And good morning, Shadow Master. You're right on time.
Says the man who was late.
Well, that was on me. Don't worry about it.
No, I know.
So now we're getting it. So, like we were talking about last time, there was a big transition in 1999. They had a new producer for Castlevania at Konami. So here he is, Koji Igarashi, sitting in the Dracula throne room prop used in reference for the Castlevania game. So I thought that picture was pretty cool.
Oh, of him sitting in the
Dracula chair. It's the Dracula throne they used as a prop for reference in the Castlevania games, and I thought that was pretty interesting.
Is that that's the image from Bloodstained, right?
Bloodstained, yes, but it's also he's sitting. It's the throne room. It's the chair that was Dracula's throne used as a prop in the game as well. So I thought it was pretty cool.
Yeah, because I remember my brother got into the Kickstarter, and so he showed me the clips, and I love that he just throws away the wine glass as well.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, they had a new producer. Koji Igarashi became the new producer in 1989, and that was the same year. And we were talking last time briefly about Castlevania 64 and Legacy of Darkness. Mm-hmm. So yeah, they were in a rush to finish 64, but he came in and the team for 64 asked him, "Hey, can we give a more complete version of this?" He said, "Sure, go ahead." And that's where we get Legacy of Darkness, which is the complete story as the team wanted it to be, including a subplot with Cornell the werewolf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually sat down and watched a video discussing how they transitioned to 3D. These guys had no idea what they were doing, and I don't
hit or miss. I mean, they had, what was it? 1998 was Metal Gear Solid, Legend of Zelda, and right before that, PlayStation was on a roll because they had, of course, Metal Gear Solid. They also had Crash Bandicoot. PlayStation knocked it out of the park. Sony knocked it out of the park with 3D.
Spyro as well? Or was that was a little bit later? I don't remember. I don't know enough about Spyro, but
Spyro the Dragon, that was 1999, so that's close. Okay.
Yeah, but even then, on the other side, Nintendo was already doing all kinds of other things, and then Konami was just like, "What's this 3D thing that the youngsters are into?" And so they got thrown into something they were not prepared for, and yeah, the differences are quite stark.
Hi ZXO, or is that how you say it, Zo or ZXO? Yeah. So yeah, it was tough. The 3D was tough. PlayStation seemed to be doing the best at first out of all 3, with quite a number of hits. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people thinking he was hostile, but he was actually fine with certain alternate universe parts. But he was very particular about saying that it wasn't part of the story of the main timeline, such as Circle of the Moon. Which I like Circle of the Moon, and we're going to get to it later on here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here it is, Bloodlines. So yes, you can play Bloodlines now because the Switch store has the Sega Genesis emulator. You can get that and play various games, including this one for Nintendo Switch right now.
Yeah, that'll be the first time I get to properly play it too, because I never owned a Sega or anything. So I've always been interested in Bloodlines, especially after Portrait of Ruin like directly ties into it.
Neither did I until I got the Genesis Classic that they sell. It's a Sega Genesis, but it comes with all the games just built into it, installed into it. So you just boot it up, right. And you boot it up, and you pick which game you want to play. Mm-hmm. And it's cheaper. It's cheap, so relatively. So it was pretty good.
Yeah. So this is one of the last of the classic series.
Right, but I saved it for this episode because it's what Koji Igarashi made the continuity revolve around.
Mm-hmm.
So he made it be that there's no Alucard, no Belmonts, and then later, as you found out, Symphony was supposed to be a prequel to this one, but it was pretty good. There was 2 optional characters you can play as. One's Eric Alucard, who got Alucard's weapon, but Alucard isn't there for a reason. I don't know. Then there's Jonathan Morris, who has the whip. So.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting that it became a spear in Portrait of Ruin as well as this. And it's like, he had a sword.
Right.
That one I never understood.
Look, and we're going to talk about Portrait of Ruin later today, but I liked it because of all the ways they made Eric Alucard similar to Alucard as a way of showing that he inherited his title. He inherited his position as the vampire killer, but Alucard's not there. So I felt that was pretty interesting, pretty cool. But yeah, I saved it for this because this became the foundation for what Igarashi was making his timeline with as the new producer. So going here, yeah. So this is all that leads up to Bloodlines that we have in terms of Castlevania. Yeah. Rondo of Blood, Symphony of the Night, and Nocturne of Recollection.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, and the third of which is almost never discussed. I think. Besides, I don't know anybody else that's really gone over the radio drama.
Yeah, Stock has gone through it like all the way through. Done a bit by bit review. I'll put a link to him after this live stream's done. Stock Tepes. He hasn't been active in a while, but he had some things he went over the various parts in it. But coming back to it, I actually do like what they did with Richter now. I mean, it was nice to see Richter back and willing to show how much he cared about Maria and about the guy Maria cared about. And I feel that was a great thing to show how much Richter, how noble and how determined Richter was in spite of everything that happened.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Symphony of the Night being the main one that Igarashi led, and he really set the standard.
Yeah, he did. As we talked about in the previous one, not everything in it was new. I mean, you could choose to be other characters, going back to Dracula's Curse or Castlevania 3, but and Keys was, as we talked about, all these things we think about as being later Castlevania were actually at the beginning. Keys to Open Doors, that was Simon's Quest. Mm-hmm. Buying things was Simon's Quest. Vampire Killer, which is the MSX. Just trust me, anyone in the audience who doesn't know about these, there's plenty of consoles you probably never know about. You'll probably never hear about because they just didn't do as well.
It really showed his depth of the franchise because he pulled so many elements, and hilariously, Simon's Quest was like the main DNA for Symphony.
Yes, it was. 10 years earlier. So insane. So crazy. But yeah, Symphony of the Night and the whole roaming was, as we mentioned before, Rondo of Blood was interesting because it was the first one that allowed you to save your game without continuing, which is pretty cool. And it was originally on. I'm not sure I can pronounce this right. Turbo GFX PC.
Yeah, basically, it's Turbo Graphics.
You're right.
Yeah, it was originally a PC engine, basically for consoles. Japan was so far ahead of us when it came to like the console technology, because most of the original Famicom games, as an example, like Rondo of Blood, were actually basically discs.
Right, they were. The original, just for you in the audience, like Famicom, they were used. You know how there was. You probably were more familiar with the Apple II if you're around in the '80s, but back then there was the Famicom where you put floppy disks in a PC that was from Nintendo. Then I'm going to talk about the Sega 68000X, which is. It was another one that we don't know about, but that was Sega's thing. And I know that there was Sony, there was 3DO. 3DO was a console. So.
Yeah, one of those obscure ones that no one ever really knew about.
Right. Yeah, I think it's Top Hat Gaming that goes through all these consoles that you may have not remembered. And he does it a whole lot. Even I didn't know about some of them. Mm-hmm. So I'll mention Top Hat Gaming as well, because he has a lot of references to the many, many consoles that actually existed, but you probably never heard about. Right. But as I mentioned the earlier one, like Nocturne Recollection isn't my flavor, but I'm glad that Richter, came back and showed how much he cared. That was very noble of him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he needed some sort of. I don't think it was quite redemption, but he definitely needed to fix some of that issue. Some of his hubris, and try to make up for his failings, which was really nice.
Yes, it was. It was. Yes, but as we're going to show you, the reason why Rondo of Blood and Symphony of the Night seem connected is because Koji Igarashi himself, decided to call up the person and talk to him at lunch, because he told the person working on Rondo of Blood, hey, I'm making the sequel, so I kind of want to know what I'm getting into when I'm making the sequel as to what happens in Rondo, because it's a sequel. I want it to make sense.
Mm-hmm. It's too bad he didn't get a hold of the franchise earlier, because, man, Rondo of Blood would have been so much nicer with the ability to slide dash and shoulder tackle.
It is, but at least you can unlock Richter as a playable character by beating it. Which is funny, ZXO, because you can also, when we're going to talk about Curse of Darkness, you can unlock Trevor mode by beating the game as Hector.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing that I think that Symphony of the Night may have done, is that in the PlayStation versions, at least you can unlock Richter by beating it with Alucard, just to see how a different play style works.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and in the Sega Saturn version, you could play as Maria.
Yes, she was even more ridiculous than the mobile or other versions, because she shot fireballs. Because originally, the shortcoming of Maria's attacks is her birds have a limited range and they boomerang back to her. But in the Sega Saturn version, she shoots a long-range fireball that goes all the way across the screen.
Yeah,
so
as powerful and overpowered as she was in Rondo, but still nice to see another character to be played as.
Right. And there's also new areas you can go into in the Sega Saturn version, which is really rare. It's not as well known as the PlayStation version, but there's new areas like the Upper Gardens that you don't find in any other version of the game, with their own bosses and treasures. But yeah, going back to what you said, ZXO, yeah, a lot of similar things happen in Symphony of the Night. There's so many, and Curse of Darkness, there's so many unique items in them that there's replay value just to find the other unique items you didn't find before. So I'm going to try focusing on the time, but here's the other one. So after the Symphony there's what we're going to do now, and that was Circle the Moon. That is a special place for me.
Mm-hmm. I have a soft spot for Castlevania 64 of all of the games.
I do. I do. I mean, it's a type of 3D where, you know, when you're playing as Reinhardt, it's very close to being, you know, a console side scroll, well, 3D at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also really appreciate the horror they managed to fit into it. Like when you first run across the vampire in the underground, and the girl
yes
from the ceiling, and you're like, ah.
Yes, and the reveal and the plot twist I felt was pretty good for a new Castlevania game.
Mm.
I was always suspicious of that one person that met you a couple times, and then you finally got revealed as who it was. Like, oh, that's it. You, Dracula, and the other guys. You guys were all such sick sons of. You know what? I'm trying not to get censored by YouTube here.
I gotcha. Yeah. So anyway, as Igarashi took over, the franchise seemed to really turn itself up. You got Circle of the Moon. We got Harmony of Dissonance, which we'll probably get to.
We will. This is next because this is sort of an in between part right here. So this is when he was just starting. But one thing I liked about Circle of the Moon was their version of Carmilla. I mean, previously she was a flying mask or a flying skull, but in this one, she looks like this pretty woman in a red dress, and then she becomes this giant mix between a crab and a spider that tries to eat you in Circle of the Moon. I mean, it's just like, it's one of the craziest types of horror that I've seen from someone named Carmilla in a video game. The only thing that comes close is the Vampire Hunter D video game, which is the only one for Vampire Hunter D released in 2000.
Man, I haven't heard much about that game in forever.
Yeah, it was one of the last like PS1 games, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of it's the same, similar to Bloodlust, but the animated film Vampire Hunter D Bloodlust, but it's different in a number of ways. Like there are some monsters that only appear in the game, and Carmilla in the game actually fully comes back to life as a similar looking monster. And I'm just trying to tell myself that it is only a coincidence that she appears almost the same as how she does as the Carmilla in Circle of the Moon when she's this crab spider monster trying to eat you in that one. In both games, someone called Carmilla as a giant crab monster. So yeah, they ended up becoming out of canon because actually Reinhardt is a Belmont, but it didn't go with what Igarashi wanted.
Mm.
So Reinhard Schneider is Richter's great-grandson, but it's just that Richter had a daughter who married out of the name Belmont, so his name is Schneider. But so Reinhard Schneider doesn't have the name Belmont, but he's directly descended from Richter.
Okay, well, that explains the name. I knew that he was a descendant, I just wasn't sure how, in the same way of, like, Morris, for example.
So, yeah, Richter had a daughter who married a guy named Schneider. Her son, Michael Schneider, took the whip, and he passed it on to Reinhardt.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it still is... Reinhardt, it's complicated, and I think not having him do the name Belmont kind of complicates it a little bit. But, the Schneiders ended up showing up in Lords of Shadow. Different characters, but they used a lot of these ideas that didn't make it into canon in Lords of Shadow. So.
Okay.
So now we're at Harmony of Dissonance. And yes, Um, Albeleo is playing through it on live stream. Is it today or tomorrow that you're going live with Harmony of Dissonance again?
Tomorrow at 7 Central, 7 p.m.
Okay, so if you're Eastern Standard like me, that's 8 p.m. But you can go check out. Hopefully, Albeleo finishes Harmony of Dissonance tomorrow.
Yeah, after the fucking stupid box puzzle.
Yeah, that's a hard part. That's a hard part of it. I don't blame you.
I hate myself for not having figured it out. I really like puzzles, and then to see this really simple one, and I'm so angry with myself about that.
It's all right. I mean, a lot of these games have have this such a way that sometimes you need to just rest and get off the game. Then it isn't so hard to get the answer.
Yeah. So yes. So this is the portable era, and this is probably what I think most people recognize when it comes to Castlevania.
Yeah, for the most part, yes. Dracula X Chronicles, which is how I first played. It's a remake of Rondo of Blood. It's how I first played it, but I was glad that I could save my game because, it's school, it's college life, and you need to have other things. So save your game, come back to it later.
Yeah, this is quite the period.
It is.
I really like Portrait of Ruin myself. Although I've heard a lot of people say that what is it? Dawn of Sorrow is the last one. Is like the best game in the franchise apparently.
Yeah, Dawn of Sorrow for the DS is it's the conclusion, and it's in the future, in the 2030s. But it's about how there's a new person who has been chosen by Chaos to have Dracula's spot as to have the spot of being the right hand of Satan in the future. It's kind of interesting. Soma Cruz.
Soma is the reincarnation of Dracula.
Right. The same. Well, it's explained that he's a separate person from Dracula, but Chaos, or the devil in Castlevania, chose him to have a similar position where he represents Satan or the devil on Earth, or Chaos on Earth.
Mm.
So yeah, it's interesting. I mean, there's Aria of Sorrow too for Game Boy Advance, and just like you, I really enjoyed Portrait of Ruin for the kind of art they put into it. I mean, it's not the best art ever, but the paintings and the world within the paintings has an interesting dimension to show you elements of what Bronner and Dracula put into those pictures.
Yep.
Because Bronner puts in a World War I, or a way a town appears in World War I in one of the paintings, and that kind of that seems to be his nostalgia for the way the things were in the past. Or there's the painting of there's also Ancient Egypt and a number of other ones, but it's just interesting how there's thematics shown in the various paintings, and I always found that interesting in that game.
So, which of these 6 is your favorite?
Portrait of Ruin. Second is probably Order of Ecclesia.
Okay, because I know Despair really wanted me to sit down and play Ecclesia. And I know that a lot of people were like, no, play other ones. And I was like, okay. It is.
I mean, it's an interesting kind of play style. Like, there's so many things you can do with Shinoa's different glyph spells. So,
okay,
you mix spells and it creates a totally new spell. You use 2 of the same and it creates an extra powerful version of the same spell. So there's all these different combinations you can play around with when it comes to her and her spell casting. There's also, it's an interesting and somewhat tragic story about her and her adopted family, but I'm not going to spoil too much about that game.
Thank you. All right, so this is I think by far the most widely successful of the Castlevania franchise. How well did all of these perform? because this kept Castlevania alive for a long time.
Nintendo DS and PSP. I mean, a lot of people got access to playing Rondo of Blood by Dracula X Chronicles. Because, like we said before, the Turbo GFX wasn't all that well known. Most people just got the inferior version on SNES, just called Dracula X. So,
and that game will make you want to rip your fucking hair out. God, that Dracula fight is just infuriating. It's bad enough fighting him in such a limited form, but there are instant death. For anybody who doesn't know, in Dracula X, when you go to fight Dracula, there are instant death pits all around you.
Well, I always thought of it as you have a couple of little scaffolding spots, and if you fall in, but that's the same idea.
It's just brutal. Like you could get so far, and because everybody in this franchise likes to get smacked around, and they throw themselves back with Spanish opera dramatics. You just die. You just die. It sucks.
Yeah, don't fall. Don't fall. Yeah. But this was a case where on the portable market they carved out a niche pretty well. So next one we're going to go into is the actual main PS2 Xbox games, and an odd case of Castlevania Chronicles. Castlevania Chronicles was on as I mentioned before, the Sega 68000X. That was the game that was originally for that obscure Sega PC back in 1993, but they made a version on PS1 that was that was more accessible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this era is one I don't know a great deal of. Like I like Chronicles is obviously just another remake of one, just fine. But Lament of Innocence, Curse of Darkness, like I haven't Harmony of Despair. I haven't played these, but I do know quite a bit about the stories. So mostly I'll just be asking questions.
Yeah, hey ZXO, don't worry about it. I mean, this isn't exactly the best time of day for me to go live. I'm gonna have this all three as a premiere when more people can see it, because a lot of my audience isn't on right at this point. Don't worry about it. But yeah, Harmony of Despair is probably my least favorite of all of them, because I mean it's cool to have a multiplayer game where you play co-op, but it's nothing really plot wise. I mean, it's just cool the way to have crossed over characters and play multiplayer with your friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I need to try to make time to do anything, honestly. But I've seen you been streaming Curse of Darkness.
Yes.
How does it hold up all this time later?
I mean, Curse of Darkness is great. It's from before the dark times and before they microtransaction you to death. Just to get items, because in Curse of Darkness you don't have microtransactions. You have to actually go finding the materials, and there's replay value because some of the materials for making unique weapons and unique armor are so unique that you can't get all of it in one playthrough. You have to play through it a second time. There are characters like Saint Germain and others that have unique materials, but so far I'm trying to make the frying pan on this playthrough. And if you don't know, the frying pan is an overpowered joke weapon, but it's hard to make. I've previously done the beam sword, a knockoff of the lightsaber, and oh yeah, I haven't done the Gatling gun yet, but it should be fun when I do.
There's a Gatling gun?
Yes, you can have a machine gun in this game, but it's like the frying pan. It's a joke weapon.
Okay. Can't imagine that anybody would have a hard time clearing out Dracula's castle with a machine gun.
Right. But no, I mean it's I mean, Curse of Darkness is similar to what Diablo used to be before your microtransaction like crazy in Diablo 3 and 4. You know, you just had to play the game and find the materials to make the items.
Mm-hmm.
You got the whole game for either Xbox or PS2.
Oh, Curse of Darkness is on Xbox One or the original Xbox?
Yeah, it had both. It was released for both the original Xbox and the original PS2. The advantage the Xbox had is it had widescreen dimensions. The PS2 not so much. So if you wanted to play widescreen, that was what the Xbox, and with somewhat higher resolution, the Xbox version had that. But I'm fine with the PS2 version, which is what I've been playing live.
Gotcha. All right. Well, how about Lament of Innocence? You know, Leon, the beginning of the franchise, chronologically.
Right. Yeah, it's a prequel in the origin story. I think it's pretty good. I feel it holds up pretty well. You know, it brought back the whip swing that you got in Castlevania 4, only now it's like a 3D game where you get to play a classic Belmont. Yeah, ZXO, I would like it if they finally did a collection with the PS2 games. That would make it really complete. Very complete.
Yeah, but we all know that Konami is allergic to money, so that probably won't be happening.
Well, Konami's main priority right now is they're remaking Metal Gear Solid, which I can understand how well Metal Gear Solid games sold. They did sell better than Castlevania ones as a series.
Which is a shame.
I mean, I don't entirely blame them. I mean, this is one case where I can understand the hype for Metal Gear Solid because Metal Gear was the first time they really emphasized sneaking up on people in a game. Because it was a game where if you didn't sneak up on people, you could get overwhelmed by an entire mob of security guards. But I would really like to have a remaster, and a lot of games that were originally PlayStation or Xbox end up on Steam. And I would like it if these games like Curse of Darkness, Lament of Innocence ended up on a Steam release.
Or GOG, considering they have a bunch of retro games, like the first 2 Warcraft games, but Steam doesn't.
Oh yeah, they have over at the GOG. They have They have Konami Classics, but it's not quite the same as Castlevania Remastered that Steam offers. I mean, Konami Classics is a mixture of Metal Gear 1 and 2. Then they also offer GOG also has Metal Gear Solid. But the Classics collection has Castlevania 1 through 3 and Metal Gear 1 and 2 in a remastered collection.
Okay.
So I have the links already in the playlist description for getting to GOG and Steam for anyone who's watching.
Sweet.
So the next one is yes, the canceled films.
Oh yeah, this is an interesting and a bit obscure for me. I don't know too much, but I've heard a lot about the various things. So take it away.
Okay, so Konami planned on a trilogy with Koji Igarashi as the main producer. There's going to be a trilogy of animated Castlevania films. There was some anime hype in the 2000s, so they wanted to take advantage of that part. So that's where Warren Ellis first writ, and he and Koji Igarashi could not come to an agreement on what draft they wanted to get made into a product, so it didn't end up happening. Great, immense creative differences between the two.
Mm-hmm.
So the disputes went on for a number of years, and basically the Netflix series had some of the concepts, but not all of them. Some concepts, such as Alucard appearing to be like Bela Lugosi, were part of what Koji Igarashi wanted to do, because he wanted to make it similar to Castlevania 3 and how he appeared in it, but more detailed. And Koji also wanted to include Grant, and he wanted it to be a trilogy of films about 1.5 hours long for each one. And he and Warren Ellis couldn't come to an agreement as to what they wanted to actually put out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the most popular or most well known of the failed movies was actually at least here in America, was Paul W.S. Anderson of Event Horizon and Resident Evil fame, which is immediately the moment everybody has when they hear it.
And don't forget, Paul Anderson also was Mortal Kombat, the first Mortal Kombat movie.
Yep, yeah, and he was supposed to make a Castlevania movie. God, man, I think before Van Helsing came out. So what was that? 04, 03, 04, or something like that. I'll look it up, but yeah. So that was originally supposed to be what happened. Yeah, 04. So that was originally what was supposed to happen, and he was left in production hell for I think like a decade, because he was making the Resident Evil series and just wiping himself with fandom, and then everybody's just like, yeah, let's not.
I do think the Ada Wong. I don't care much for the films. I do think the Ada Wong looked pretty good in the Resident Evil movie.
Yeah, he managed to get like certain characters to look like just right. Like Leon. Leon looks like an older Leon, which was great. Everything else, nope.
Yeah. Yes, Resident Evil, the subject of jokes about a video game movie, possibly only surpassed by Uwe Ball.
Oh.
The Postal movie.
Of all the stupid things, at least Uwe Ball actually managed to end his movies by literally fighting the journalists that reviewed them negatively.
Yeah.
Like everybody, for as much crap as that man gets, and it's well deserved, he at least literally fought to defend his movies.
Yeah. Yes. Oh yeah, Super Mario. I mean, there was a Super Mario Brothers movie long before 2023. It was in 1993 with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo.
The 90s were a dark time.
Well, they were a good time for guilty pleasure movies that I could laugh at how terrible they were.
Oh yeah, like Shaquille O'Neal and Steel.
Yes. Yeah.
Or that movie that everybody thinks that Sebastian was in, Shazam or Kazam.
Kazam, yeah.
Yeah.
Where Shaquille is the genie.
Yeah, but everybody thinks it's Sebastian. He's like, no, stop it. But, yeah. So Paul W.S. Anderson didn't get to make that movie, which, in hindsight, I don't know which one I would have taken over this or the anime. But I think the anime. I think the first two.
And another thing is they have had interesting. They have had some good Castlevania fan films, such as Hymn of Blood. If you can find it on YouTube, it's a fan film about Castlevania featuring Simon in it.
Okay.
So I'll put a link to that after we're done as well. But we're going to get to the next one.
Yes.
So we can joke about this a few more minutes. So getting back to this, it's funny is that the one unofficial Castlevania movie they had was Dracula 2000.
Oh, with Butler, yes.
Gerard Butler as Count Dracula. Yes. The funniest. Do you know what the references to Castlevania in it were?
I have not seen Dracula 2000 in so long. I don't remember much about the movie.
So
I never liked it, but
yeah. So there's the leading man, and the co-star is a guy named Simon, but not Belmont. that guy named Simon does the Holy Bible attack, and he throws a cross like the Castlevania games.
Oh wow, yeah. No, I have to I have to sit down and watch it because I really liked the idea that he's
Judas, yeah.
It's great, and he didn't quite die, and he got stuck in between and went on about his life. I thought that was really cool. I haven't seen it in so damn long.
I mean, the rest of the movie's a joke, but that was it. I just remember, looking at it, it's like, why didn't I not think of that origin? Like, it explains so much.
Yeah. It's also really hard to make the curly-haired dude from that '70s show tough.
Oh, that's right. He was from that '70s show.
Yeah.
Oh, he was.
Yeah. I'll have to pay attention to that. I really need to sit down and watch it again. I have so little time for actually watching movies, unfortunately, which is stupid considering that's what I do.
Well, sometimes I just don't watch videos on YouTube for a while. Like, I take a week off every now and then because it somehow it just makes me feel more creative. I don't know why, but it does.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah, Jesus
blast.
So yeah. So now we can go to the conclusion here. I forgot about that. Dracula 2000. So yeah, overall, these are our final thoughts. Built on the themes of Bloodlines and used Bloodlines as a foundation for what they're making. Yes, and there's a Castlevania Easter egg in the Van Helsing video game. I'm going to, for the next episode, for Loose Ends is the next episode, I'm going to show you a picture of that reference to Castlevania in the Van Helsing game, because if you go to the library in the Van Helsing game, you find a book that says a series of exploits by Dracula's arch enemies, the Belmonts. You can't get any more blatant than that.
Huh. All right, so retrospective themes and icons.
Yeah, maybe I'll take a month off of watching anyways. Yeah, so Century of Other Hunters. That's how we got the DS games.
When he was desperately trying to figure out how to prepare for Dracula without the Belmonts.
Right. And then at the end, they were back. But, yeah, so everyone get ready and get set. Episode 3 is going to be talking about Lords of Shadow. We're going to take however long we need to make sure we studied a bit about that. And also Loose Ends tied up. So thanks for stopping by. Hope you all have a wonderful afternoon. And yes, that is a reference, Shadow Master. And sayonara, and have a nice day.
All right. Have a good day, everyone.
There we go.